I never thought I'd get that call during Professor Martinez's economics lecture. The sudden vibration of my phone made me jump, and when I saw Mom flash across the screen, my heart dropped. Dad had been fighting pancreatic cancer for months, and somehow, I just knew. "Emily," Mom's voice cracked. "Your father, he's gone." The lecture hall suddenly felt too small, too crowded. At 21, I thought I was prepared for this moment. Dad and I had talked about it during my last visit home, when the doctor said the treatment wasn't working anymore. He'd squeezed my hand and told me, "My brave girl, you'll be okay." But nothing really prepares you for losing your father. I'd always been Daddy's little girl. Growing up, he'd been the one to teach me how to ride a bike, help me with math homework, and later, drive me to college tours. Mom was more of a free spirit. She'd never held a steady job, preferring to focus on her various hobbies and social activities. Dad didn't mind. His job as a financial advisor provided well for us, and he loved seeing Mom happy. After getting permission from the dean's office to take time off, I booked the first available train home. The 3-hour journey gave me time to think about the last few months. Dad had been so methodical about everything, even his illness. He'd made sure I visited regularly, had long talks with me about the future, and kept reminding me how proud he was of my decision to study business administration. When I arrived at our 2-story suburban home, Mom was waiting at the door, mascara streaking down her face. She pulled me into a tight hug, her designer blouse damp with tears. "Oh, Emily. What am I going to do? This house, all the bills. I haven't worked in 20 years. I guided her to the kitchen, noticing the half-empty wine glass on the counter. "Mom, we need to focus on the funeral arrangements first. Did Dad leave any instructions?" She waved vaguely toward his home office. "Everything's in his desk. He was always so organized." She reached for the wine glass. The next few days became a blur of funeral preparations. Mom seemed unable to handle any decisions, dissolving into tears whenever I asked her opinion about flowers or the service program. I found myself coordinating with the funeral home, calling relatives, and handling all the arrangements while she calmed her nerves with more wine. The morning of the funeral arrived clear and crisp. People filled our house, offering condolences and bringing casseroles. Mom put on quite a show, dramatically breaking down several times during the service. I noticed her friend Sandra patting her back, whispering something in her ear that made Mom nod vigorously. "Your father was such a wonderful man," relatives kept telling me. "He always thought ahead, always took care of his family." I smiled politely, holding myself together. Dad wouldn't have wanted me to fall apart. He'd raised me to be stronger than that. Still, as I watched them lower his casket into the ground, I couldn't help but wonder what changes this loss would bring to our lives. A week after the funeral, Mom and I sat in Mr. Peterson's law office for the reading of Dad's will. Mom kept fidgeting with her pearl necklace, Dad's gift for their 20th anniversary. Mr. Peterson adjusted his glasses and began reading in his precise, measured voice. "Being of sound mind and body, I, Robert James Harrison, declare this to be my last will and testament." I listened carefully as he outlined the details. When he got to the main provisions, Mom's fidgeting stopped abruptly. "To my beloved daughter, Emily Harrison, I leave our family home, along with a sum of $200,000. Mom's head snapped up. I could feel her tension beside me. "To my wife, Catherine Harrison, I leave a monthly allowance of $1,500 to be paid from my retirement fund." "That's it," Mom's voice cracked. "I'm his wife. 23 years of marriage, and this is what I get." "Mrs. Harrison," Mr. Peterson's tone was gentle, but firm. "Your husband carefully considered these arrangements. The will is properly executed and legally binding. It would be best to accept his decision." Mom muttered something under her breath, her fingers now twisting her necklace so tight I worried it might break. The drive home was tense, filled only with her occasional mumbled comments about "unfair" and "can't believe he would do this." That evening, I made us a simple dinner, Dad's favorite pasta recipe. Mom pushed the food around her plate before finally looking up at me. Emily, I just don't understand, her voice wavered. Why would your father leave everything to you? The house, all that money. I mean, what am I supposed to do? Where am I supposed to go? I reached across the table and took her hand. Mom, you don't have to go anywhere. You can stay and take care of the house while I'm at college. It'll be good for both of us. Mom's entire demeanor changed. She squeezed my hand, tears welling in her eyes. Oh, Emily, you're the best daughter in the world. I knew you wouldn't let me down. A few days later, I returned to college, setting up automatic payments for the house utilities and property taxes from the account Dad left me. Mom and I started having regular Skype calls. She seemed to be doing better, telling me about the art classes she'd enrolled in to help cope with her grief. But as weeks turned into months, our communication pattern began to change. The Skype calls became less frequent, replaced by quick phone conversations that grew shorter each time. Mom always had somewhere to be, or something to do. I told myself it was good that she was keeping busy, that maybe this was her way of healing. December arrived with a dusting of snow and the promise of Christmas in the air. After months of increasingly short phone calls with Mom, I decided to surprise her with an early holiday visit. The train ride home was filled with memories of previous Christmases. From the train station, I took a taxi home, watching familiar streets pass by. I used my key to quietly open the front door, planning to surprise Mom. The house smelled of cinnamon and coffee, at least that hadn't changed. But then I heard laughter coming from the living room. Mom's voice, and a man's? I stepped into the doorway and froze. Mom was sitting on our couch next to a man I'd never seen before. He looked maybe 5 years younger than her, wearing an artsy-looking scarf and holding her hand. They were sitting close, laughing about something, looking completely comfortable with each other. Emily, Mom jumped slightly when she saw me. I wasn't expecting you. Obviously, I said, still standing in the doorway. I thought I'd surprise you for Christmas. You know, since we always spend it together as a family. An awkward silence filled the room. The man stood up, and I noticed he was wearing Dad's slippers. Honey, Mom said, her voice unnaturally high, I'd like you to meet James. She paused, glancing between us. My husband, we got married 3 months ago. I must have misheard. I'm sorry, did you say husband? As in married? Yes, sweetie, we met in my art class, remember, the one I told you about? James is an artist too. We just connected. She was using her explaining to a child voice, the one that always drove me crazy. 3 months ago, I did the math in my head. Mom, Dad's only been gone for 7 months. 8 months, she corrected quickly. And Emily, when you find love again, you just know. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to disturb your studies. You've been so busy with school. I looked around the room, really seeing it for the first time. Dad's favorite reading chair was gone, replaced by some modern-looking piece that didn't match anything else. There were new paintings on the walls, abstract splashes of color that Mom would have hated 6 months ago. And there, on the mantel where Dad's family photos used to be, was a large wedding picture of Mom and this James person. You moved him into my house without asking me? The words came out before I could stop them. Mom's face tightened. Emily, this is my home too. You said so yourself. Right, I took a deep breath, trying to channel Dad's calm approach to difficult situations. Well, I guess we should get to know each other then. James, what do you do for work? He smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Oh, you know how it is these days. The economy, the job market. He launched into a story about his last gallery showing, then somehow segued into a funny story about Mom's painting technique, making her giggle like a teenager. I tried again. But what's your current job? His smile faltered slightly. Well, I'm between positions at the moment. Looking for the right opportunity, you know? Something that really speaks to my creative spirit. He's an artist, Emily, Mom jumped in defensively. He can't be confined by some corporate 9-to-5 job. His last boss just couldn't understand his vision. Some people are too conventional to appreciate true creativity. Christmas morning arrived, and I woke up to the sound of clattering dishes downstairs. Following the noise to the kitchen, I found Mom setting out our best china, the set Dad had given her for their 20th anniversary, and arranging far more place settings than usual. "Mom, are we expecting company?" I asked, picking up a coffee mug from the cabinet. She barely looked up from her work. "Oh yes, James's family is coming over for Christmas dinner. They're such lovely people, Emily. You'll see." "What about the Andersons?" I asked. Dad's sister Sarah and her family had spent every Christmas with us for as long as I could remember. "And Uncle Mike and Aunt Jenny?" Mom's hands paused briefly over the silverware. "Emily, things are different now. I need to build relationships with James's family. They're part of our lives now." Before I could respond, the doorbell rang. Mom hurried to answer it, leaving me alone in the kitchen with the ghost of Christmas past. James's family arrived in a noisy cluster, his parents, who looked around the house with appraising eyes, and his sister Rachel with her husband and 2 kids. They burst in like they owned the place, immediately spreading out to explore. During dinner, Mom kept shooting me worried glances as James's family dominated the conversation. His father complained about property taxes in their neighborhood. His mother criticized the turkey, suggesting better recipes. I sat there, pushing food around my plate, thinking about previous Christmases filled with warmth and genuine family love. Then Rachel put down her fork and smiled brightly. "You know, this house is in such a perfect location, right near the good school. The kids need a good school district, and this house is just sitting here with all this extra space." "Oh, that would be wonderful," Mom exclaimed. "We'd love to have you close by, wouldn't we, Emily?" Something inside me snapped. All the tension and frustration of the past few days boiled over. "Actually, no, we wouldn't," I said firmly. "This is my house. Dad left it to me, not to Mom, and certainly not to strangers who want to move in and take over." The room went silent. Rachel's face turned red, and her husband started muttering about ungrateful young people these days. James's parents exchanged meaningful looks, his mother clicking her tongue disapprovingly. But I barely heard them. I was staring at Mom, and she was staring back at me with an expression I'd never seen before, a mixture of embarrassment, anger, and something else that looked almost like hatred. James's family didn't stick around long after my outburst. "We clearly aren't welcome here," Rachel announced, herding her children toward the door. "I wouldn't want to live in this house anyway." Her emphasis on this house made it sound like a curse. As soon as the door closed behind them, Mom exploded. "How could you?" she screamed, her face red with anger. "Do you have any idea what you've done? These are my new family." "No, Mom," I said, staying calm like Dad had taught me. "They're James's family, and they were planning to take over my house like they already owned it." "Your house?" she laughed bitterly. "This was our family home long before your father decided to play favorites in his will." "I did the right thing," I said firmly. "And if you can't see that, then maybe Dad was right about everything after all." The rest of my holiday visit passed in icy silence. Mom and James disappeared into their room whenever I was around. I spent most of my time visiting Dad's family. Aunt Sarah cried when she heard they'd excluded her from Christmas dinner, and Uncle Mike just shook his head sadly and said, "Your father would be heartbroken to see this." When I returned to college, I thought the distance might help heal things. I was wrong. Mom's calls started coming again, but they were different now. She barely asked about my classes or my life. Instead, every conversation turned to money. "James and I are struggling, Emily," she said during one call. "The monthly allowance barely covers anything these days. We need help." "Mom, maybe it's time for both of you to look for jobs," I suggested gently. The line went quiet for a moment. "How dare you?" she finally hissed. "I'm your mother. I raised you. And now you're acting like some cruel, heartless stranger." The call ended with a click. An hour later, my phone buzzed with a message from her, a photo of an empty refrigerator, followed by dramatic text, "When we starve to death, it will be on your conscience." I stared at the message for a long time, remembering how Mom used to guilt-trip Dad the same way when she wanted something. He usually gave in, saying it was easier than fighting. Despite knowing better, I found myself transferring money from Dad's account to hers. It became a pattern, her dramatic pleas, my reluctant transfers, her temporary gratitude, followed by more demands. The next months passed this way, with Mom and James living in my house while I finished college. They didn't attend my graduation ceremony, sending a text about being too busy with some art exhibition. I knew it was because I'd stopped sending extra money the month before, tired of enabling their lifestyle. After graduation, I decided to return home. When I told Mom my plans, her response was lukewarm at best. "Oh, you're moving back?" she said, her voice flat. "Well, I suppose it is your house." The way she emphasized "your house" reminded me of Rachel's tone that Christmas Day. Finding a job didn't take long. Dad's old connections in the financial sector helped me land a position at Anderson & Mills Financial Services. I threw myself into the work, grateful for the distraction from the increasingly tense situation at home. Meanwhile, Mom and James settled into a routine of their own, one that didn't involve working. Mom still received her monthly allowance of $1,500 from Dad's retirement fund, but she spent most of it entertaining James's family. Every weekend brought another artistic gathering or dinner party, with James's relatives sprawled across our living room, drinking wine and critiquing each other's artwork. I started noticing the bills piling up. The utilities had doubled since I'd been away at college. Apparently, creative spirits needed a lot of heat and hot water. The grocery bills were astronomical, thanks to Mom's frequent parties. And somehow, I'd become responsible for all of it. Every time I came home from grocery shopping, half the food would disappear into one of their parties. I'd find empty wine bottles in the recycling bin and hear James's sister Rachel laughing in the kitchen, helping herself to the snacks I'd bought for my work lunches. "Your mother is so generous," I overheard Rachel say one evening. "Unlike some people in this house." The breaking point came after 3 months of this arrangement. I'd just finished paying the property taxes, which Mom had forgotten to mention were due, when she cornered me in the kitchen. "Emily, we need to have a serious conversation." "Actually, Mom, I've been wanting to talk to you too." But she cut me off, her face set in that familiar expression she used to have when demanding something from Dad. "Margaret told me something interesting today. Her daughter Julie works in your department." My stomach dropped. Julie, the office gossip, of course. "She says you're making $4,600 a month," Mom continued, her eyes narrowing. "And yet look how you're treating your family. The bare minimum on groceries. Complaining about every little bill. Making James feel guilty about his art supplies. You're being selfish and greedy, just like your father accused me of being all those years." I stared at her, shocked by the bitterness in her voice. "So here's what's going to happen," she continued, sounding eerily calm. "You're going to give me your entire salary each month. I'll manage the household expenses, and if you behave like a good daughter should, I'll give you back maybe a third, possibly even half, if you start showing proper respect to James and his family." I stood in my kitchen staring at my mother in disbelief. The woman who had packed my school lunches, who had kissed my scraped knees, who had cried in my arms at Dad's funeral, was now demanding my entire salary like some sort of feudal lord. "I'm not giving you my salary," I said firmly. "In fact, maybe it's time both you and James found jobs. I'm tired of supporting you." Her face contorted into an ugly grimace. "Your father left you more money than you deserve. $200,000. And you're too selfish to share with your own mother?" I felt a headache building behind my eyes. "We'll talk about this tomorrow," I said, turning to leave, "when you're thinking more clearly." The next morning, I came down to breakfast to find Mom and James sitting at the table, looking like cats who'd caught a canary. The kitchen smelled of coffee and manipulation. Emily, dear, Mom began, her voice honey-sweet. James and I had a long talk last night. James nodded sagely beside her, wearing another one of the expensive sweaters I'd essentially paid for. We've come up with the perfect solution, she continued. Since we take such good care of the house, cleaning, cooking, maintaining everything, it's only fair that you pay us for our services. James smiled benevolently. We think your full salary, the $4,600, would be fair compensation. I took a long sip of coffee, letting the absurdity of their proposal sink in. The house they claimed to maintain had dust bunnies the size of actual bunnies. The last time Mom had cooked was probably before she met James. And maintenance? They called me every time a light bulb needed changing. You know what, I said slowly. You're right, services should be paid for. Their faces lit up like Christmas trees. Mom reached for James's hand, squeezing it triumphantly. But, I continued, I won't be requiring your services anymore. Especially since there haven't actually been any services to speak of, unless you count drinking wine and hosting parties as household maintenance. The smiles froze on their faces. In fact, I stood up from the table, surprising myself with how calm I felt. I want you both out of my house. You have 7 days to find a new place to live, or I'll be contacting a lawyer about formal eviction proceedings. The color drained from Mom's face as she realized I was serious. She leaped up from her chair, grabbing one of Dad's old plates from the table. You ungrateful little. Break it, I said coldly, and I'll deduct it from your next allowance check. Along with anything else you damaged during your tantrum. Mom's hand shook, but she didn't drop the plate. I turned and walked upstairs to my room. Behind me, I could hear Mom's screams turning to sobs, James's attempts at consolation, the sound of things being knocked around in the kitchen. But for the first time since Dad died, I felt like I was doing exactly what he would have wanted me to do. A soft knock on my bedroom door came a few hours later. Emily, sweetie, Mom's voice had shifted back to its sugary sweet tone. Can we talk? I opened the door, but stayed in the doorway, blocking her entrance into my space. She'd fixed her makeup and put on the sweater she used to wear when trying to convince Dad to buy her something expensive. I was just joking about the money, she said, attempting a light laugh. We don't need your salary. James and I just want to keep living here with you. We're family, after all. No, Mom, I replied, feeling suddenly tired. I've made my decision. You need to find your own place to live. For the next few days, she tried every manipulation tactic in her playbook. She left tearful notes under my door. She sent James to plead their case, claiming they'd change. She even tried guilt-tripping me with more photos of empty cupboards and unpaid bills. I stopped eating meals with them, ordering takeout to my room instead. The sound of their voices downstairs, alternating between arguing and planning their next move, became background noise to my new reality. A week later, I came home from work to find them packing. Mom was dramatically throwing things into boxes, making sure I could hear every item hit the cardboard. I hope you're happy, she spat when she saw me. Throwing your own mother out on the street. James stood behind her, arms crossed. Some daughter you turned out to be. They left that evening in a flurry of curse words and slammed doors. As their car pulled away, I walked through the house that was finally, truly mine. Over the next few weeks, news trickled in through the family grapevine. Aunt Sarah called to tell me Mom was badmouthing me to anyone who would listen, claiming I'd cruelly evicted her out of pure spite. But don't you worry, Aunt Sarah assured me. We all remember how she treated your father. Nobody's buying her victim act this time. Uncle Mike told me that Mom and James had tried moving in with Rachel, the same sister who'd wanted to take over my house at Christmas. She turned them down flat, he chuckled. Suddenly their perfect new family wasn't so perfect anymore. James's parents, who'd spent countless evenings enjoying Mom's parties in my house, also refused to take them in. Even their public support evaporated once the free wine and appetizers stopped flowing. Mom eventually found a small apartment across town, using her monthly allowance from Dad for rent. For the first time in her adult life, she had to get a real job, a sales position at a local boutique. James, true to form, remained unemployed, still claiming he was too creative for regular work. I ran into her once at the grocery store. She looked different, older, somehow, without all her expensive creams and salon appointments. She started to turn down my aisle, then quickly wheeled her cart in the opposite direction. Standing in my father's, my house a few months later, I finally felt ready to make changes. That weekend, I bought paint samples and gardening tools. The house that had seen so much drama and pain would become something new. As I planned the renovations, I realized that sometimes you have to tear something down to build it back up stronger.